Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Okay, ahlan wa sahlan, as they say in Arabic, which means welcome, to our third dars, third lesson. So we're still covering the basic concepts. And so what we're trying to do is give you about 10 to 20% of the grammar theory. The 20% of the grammar theory is applicable to 80% of the language. Okay, the other 80% is the fine tuning of the 20% of the application. So this 20% is really going to give you 80% of the stuff, and that's what we're going to be doing these next, the previous and subsequent lessons, to get you that 80% understanding through this 20% important core stuff that we're doing, inshallah. Once we have that, then we're going to start the text, and in that text you will apply that 20% knowledge, okay, and then gradually we'll start to build on these other 80% knowledge through the subsequent lessons. So that's the idea, and the reason that this methodology works is because you don't hit a brick wall and give up. And so what traditionally sometimes is done with Arabic lessons is that they try to give you the, close to the 80% knowledge, and then you're just overwhelmed with the theory, and you cannot then apply it because you've got 80% to deal with in your head. Whereas all you really need to deal with in your head is 20%. But see applied in so many instances that it becomes a great foundation, a consolidation for you. And then you can build that layered wall, bit by bit through the many lessons that we do. Okay? And I repeat this again and again and again, inshallah, this is not mustahil, it's not impossible. Yeah, the whole idea is that we're taking this seriously. We're all Bani Adam. There's none of us that are in any special headquarters in terms of knowledge. We're all of same business in life. We have children, we have jobs, we do this on the side, so we're all in the same boat here. But inshallah, with this methodology of the course that we're going through, you will see it come alive, inshallah. And like I said, it's a long-term journey for us, and that's great, because we have the aim, the intention. So whether we get there or not, for whatever reason, inshallah, we'll be rewarded for that. And that's what's the most important thing, okay? But there will be significant milestones that we will all achieve as a group. And so the idea is that one is not ahead of the other. We're all at the same kind of level. And for me, as I said, it's about revising what I've learned and be able to present it to you, which is also a learning for me because it consolidates my own thinking as well. So we're all learning in this, inshallah. Okay, so let's briefly just summarize, and what I'll each time do and do it quicker is go back to the map and then go through the map and go back to the point of the concepts of today. All right, so we always go back to the Arabic map. Okay, so I won't go through the whole nuances, but we go through the mawdu', which is the meaningful speech in Arabic, and we know that the mawdu' is split into three types. We know it's split into kalima, for a word. We know it's split into murakkab, which is a combination of words coming together. But the murakkab can be gayrul mufid, i.e. it's a phrase, or it can be murakkab mufid. And mufid meaning beneficial, or it can be a beneficial combination of words. And what that basically means in English, a beneficial set of words is a complete sentence, as opposed to a phrase. And we gave the example that a phrase could be in the garden. Okay, it's not complete. What happened in the garden? You have to say, in the garden, I saw a flower, or I saw a person. Then that becomes a sentence. Okay, and that's really, I know we go through this really big, but this is where most people get stuck, is on these issues. When you start to see a whole trail of Arabic words in the Quran or in any tafsir book in Arabic, you get overwhelmed. Where is the comma? There's no commas, there's no nothing, it's just Arabic words stuck together. And so be able to distinguish between just words, phrases and sentences is more than half the battle, and you'll see that as we apply it, inshallah. So we understood with kalima that there were three types of words, and those three types of words were the ism, the harf, and the fi'l, the verbs. We understood that the ism is not just nouns, but incorporates more than nouns. It incorporates nouns, which are
verbs, noun, verbs, adverbs, and pronouns.
Not verbs.
not verb, adverbs.
Adverbs.
Yes. And the way you could structure it in your head so that you don't forget is think nouns is the entity of a name of a place, a thing, or a human, anything like that. An abbreviation of that would be your pronouns, okay? And a description of those nouns or pronouns would be the adjective. And then you have the adverbs, which are description of verbs as well as description of adjectives. Okay, so a description of verb meaning very fast, the verb being fast, and a description of an adjective will be extremely green, for example. Yeah, so green being the adjective and extremely being the adverb. So you can see the application is. So isms incorporate all of this. Okay, then we talked about the fi'l, okay, which are the verbs, and we understood that a verb word distinguished from an ism in that the meaning is of an action, but with a tense. Action alone is not a verb, okay? But it has to have a tense. So an action of walking, okay, would have to have the tense with it. He walked in the past, he is walking, present, or he will walk in the future. Yeah, then that verb is then that word is a verb. Okay, so you've got that, and you know that in the fi'ls are divided into three: the past, present, future, and the command. Okay, so past is madi. Okay, all right, and I'm going to sort of say these things because I want us to get used to the terminology, at least in just our speaking. You don't necessarily need to know them in terms of writing. So we had the, so that's Madi, okay, that's past, all right, and then you've got the Mudare, which is the present or future, and then you've got the Amr, okay, which is the command. So, Amr, yes, please, Faddal.
Regarding Amr, Doctor, what is request? Is also Amr?
So Amr is basically a command. So it could be stop, come here, go. So these are Amr. So for example, for go, you can say for the Madi, he is gone, past, gone, the word. Mudare, present, he is going. And Amr, go. So it's the command to do something.
But if we say request, would that be under Amr as well? Like saying, please do this.
Yes, if it's a command, yes, please do. But it'd be like oh, please proceed. Tafaddal would be an example. Tafaddal, yeah, is the command. Yeah, to proceed. Please proceed. Yeah, tafaddal. And so they'll have different Arabic descriptions, which we will go through, but just the idea that verbs are split into those three concepts: past, present, future, and command. Okay? And then lastly, we talked about harf, which are the particles. Okay? And those particles can be like prepositions, which is like in, on, at. Okay, but we understood about the harfs is that they are words that don't have any meaning in themselves. Their meaning is with the words that they are connected with. So in has no meaning unless you say in the house, right? Yeah. With has no meaning except if you say walking with Amr, then it has a meaning. But with alone has no meaning. It has no meaning in itself. It's a way of connecting words together. And then the connected words together has that overall meaning, okay? And these are small particles. And what we understood with the harfs is that they are divided into two. And we talked about amil and gayru amil, okay, for the harf. So عامل غير عامل. All right? And what عامل in this context means is the governing agent. Okay? So, governing agent. And غير عامل is the non-governing agent. Now, what do I mean by that? What is Nadeem talking about here? Now, this nicely introduces us to the actual lecture for today. And this is about, what I'm going to specifically talk about is about the isms, okay? All right? So we understood that isms are, they have like nouns, pronouns, and adjectives and adverbs. Isms express grammatical states. Right? And I'm going to get you to understand this because I'm going to give you the example that we talked about in our very first lesson. So let's just put that. So isms, and it's about grammatical states. Sorry about my writing. And remember we had that when we said gave the example of daraba, that Zaid hit Amr. Remember we did that in the first time. We said that how many, there's different ways of expressing this. Yeah. So here we had daraba Zaydun Amrun, and we understood that the beauty of the Arabic language is that you can mix this around. You could say Zaydun daraba Amran, or you could say Amran daraba Zaydun. And we understood that, in English, you can't do that. You always have to have the subject first. You have to say Zayd, then you have to have the verb, hit, and then Amr always has to be at the end an object, yeah? But we knew in Urdu that if you attach it to ne, Zayd ne, Amr ko, Mara, you can do that in different mixtures because you can just attach the ne and ko. In Arabic, we understood that you can do the mixture, but in the minimum amount of words, which are 3 words, yeah? Whereas in Urdu, you have to have 5 words to do that, yeah? So Urdu has flexibility, Arabic has flexibility, but in Arabic, we can do flexibility in the minimum number of words. Okay, so that's the superiority of the Arabic language. Why is that the case? It's because of the case endings, Zaydun and Amran. These are grammatical states. The subject today. These are grammatical states. That's what I'm talking about, right? And it's the grammatical states that actually give us the variety of the language of how the isms are used, okay? And so what we're going to do now is actually see, well, how many grammatical states are there in Arabic? Thankfully, there are only 3 that you have to worry about for isms, okay? 2 of which you have seen here. You've seen the Dhamma and the Fatha, okay? So if we were going to break down these grammatical states, we would say their terms are Rafa, and then you've got Nasab, and then you've got Jar. These are the 3 grammatical states, okay? And I'm going to show you how it looks. What did I mean by that? So if we use the Arabic word, let's say bait, so that will be baytu. In the nasab, it will be bayta, and in the jar, it's going to be bayti, okay? And so, so what you see is a dhamma for rafa, a fatha for nasab, and a kasra for jar. So if you, dhamma, fatha and kasra. Kasra. Okay? So what you see here is that the grammatical state is called rafa, nasab and jar, and it is expressed in most cases as a dhamma for rafa, or should I say reflected. They use the grammatical reflection. Okay, so it's reflected as a dhamma for rafa, it is reflected as a fatha for nasab, and it is reflected as a kasra for jar. And I say most instances. And remember what we said, we're going to teach you 20% of the theory, which is applied 80% of the language. All right? So that's why I say in most cases, because it's not true in all, but it's true in 80% of the Arabic language. Okay? And what happens is that if we start to teach you all the other stuff, that's when you get lost. So you don't even need to know about it yet. Just think, in most cases, it's that 80% applied like this, dhamma, fatha, and kasra. Okay? And so, so you can see that in the example that we've put here, so you can see that the Zaydun is actually in rafa, and Amran is in nasab. Okay? And so what we can actually learn is, in this particular instance, is that the subject is always in rafa. Okay? And the object is always in nasab. Okay? And that's what helps us to know which one is the subject and object. Right? So that's one grammatical lesson or concept we've actually understood today, is that we know, so Zayd and Amr are both isms. They're both isms, okay? But their grammatical states are different because they mean something differently. When Zaydun is used, it therefore means it must be the subject because it's in rafa. And when the fatha is used in Amran, it must be that it is the object of the verb, okay? All right? So this is what it means. And this is how you can see it being applied. Does that make sense?
So dhamma is subject.
Yes.
So we can call it dhamma is all in 80% cases, as you said.
Yeah, I don't want you to. The examples you don't even need to write down. All you need to know at this moment is that isms have grammatical states, and there are 3 grammatical states, and those 3 grammatical states allow us to apply them in verbs and noun and nominal sentences. In the verbal sentence, as an example, you don't need to write this and remember this, we know that the subject is in rafa and the object is in nasab. That's a rule, and that's how you can see the application of this grammatical state in this verbal sentence. So verbal sentences, as a rule, they use the subject in rafa, a grammatical state, for the first noun, and the second noun, which is the object, is always in nasab. And the way we express that nasab is in fatha, and subject is in dhamma due to rafa.
So are you saying that daraba Zaydun Amran can be written as Zaydun daraba Amran?
Yes.
Okay.
Not
But
Amran.
it will Amran.
Amran.
Yeah. So then it gives you the same meaning.
Yes. So what we can say is that you can't have, for example, like this, for example, in Arabic grammar, you couldn't put daraba Zaydun Amrin. That's nonsensical, doesn't exist. It has to be Amran. Okay, it can't be Amrin.
What is jar?
Okay, so we'll go into the example of jar.
So brother,
Yes.
So what's the difference between two dhammas? Or it could be Zaidu. Does it make any sense, or it has to be
Okay.
Zaidun?
Okay, so that's something different, and yeah. So what it is, the idea that you just need to get away with is the dhamma and the fatha.
Right.
Yeah. We'll go into why it is double, which is what they call tanween. Okay, at a later stage.
Right.
The concept for you to get to grips with is that what the isms express grammatical states. Yeah, those grammatical states help us in when we're creating sentences to distinguish, for example, in verbs, who's the subject and who's the object, right? That grammatical state is not required in Urdu because you have ne and ko. So you can attach it. So you don't have to say Zaydun, you can say Zaydne. You don't have to go Zaydunne. You don't have to do that. There's no grammatical state in Urdu. Likewise, in English, you don't need it because subject always comes first. That's why Zayd is always Zayd. He's never Zaydun, he's never Zaydan. He's always Zayd in English. He will never be anything else because if you put him first, he means subject. But as Zahid correctly pointed out, that in Arabic, because of the grammatical state, we can mix it around. So we could put in Daraba Amran Zaydun. So the subject comes right at the end. But because it is Zaydun, at the end, the subject is there. Right? But in English, he would be the object.
Yeah.
But in Arabic, he would still remain a subject because he's in Rafa. He's in Rafa. And in verbal sentences, the subject is always in Rafa. And in verbal sentences, the object is always in Nasab. Never ever the other way around. It cannot be in Jar. There is no verbal sentence where the subject or the object is in Jar. Subject is always Rafa, object is always Nasab. And in most instances, the Rafa is reflected by a Dhamma, and in most instances, the Nasab is reflected in the Fatha. Okay? All right? And so that's why, so when you start to, inshallah, one time in the future, when we start to read Arabic without the tashkil, you'll be able to work it out from the context of the sentence, where it needs to be a dhamma or a fatha. So you can say, if I see a verbal sentence before me without any tashkil, I can work out that it cannot be. I can never say zaydin. Cannot be jar, cannot be, impossible. It's got to be either dhamma or a fatha. And on the context of what you're reading, you'll be able to work out if Zayd is the subject, it must be zaydun. Cannot be anything else. Yeah. And that's when you will start to be able to apply it because you know the rule now. This is your first major rule based on isms having grammatical states. So coming to the brother's issue about jar. Okay, so when is jar used? Okay, so jar is used in other instances, and I'll give you basically one example or two of where that might be used. Okay, it's not used in a pure verbal sentence, as we've seen, but it's used with harf. Okay, so I'll give you an example here of jar. But that terminology, I don't need you to remember. You know what it is? Because we're going to keep saying it every week. It will passively come in. So that's why, you can write it out. The only reason for you to write it out is just so that it helps you to just kind of understand it. But I don't expect you to memorize it. It's going to keep repeating every week, every week. And what I need the brothers to do is every time say, remind me again. Yeah, don't just let me carry on using the terminology. If you've forgotten what it means, hand up or just shout and say, what does that mean again? Right? So that we can keep triggering it, yeah? Because there's lots of terminology flying. But the reason I want to put that terminology in from the beginning is I want you to get used to it. And then every time we keep using it, it's going to be second nature. It will get there, inshallah. But you must keep interrupting, saying, forgotten, what's that mean again? And then we can repeat it and remind ourselves. So jar is the third state that we talked about. And jar, we said, was reflected most times with a, which? Kasra. Yeah? So the example here would be something like fi bayti. That means, so let's say fi baytin, in a house. Okay? So, fi is a harf. It's a preposition. Okay? And remember, we said with harfs is there are two types. There is the amil and there's gayru amil. Yeah? The amil is the governing agent. What that basically means is that it governs the grammatical state of what comes after it. And so, fi is a governing agent. because it has governed what the state of the ism that comes after it. It's not fi baytun, it's not fi baytan, it is fi baytin. And the rule is that anything that follows a preposition, and a preposition is a governing agent, it will always be in jar. Okay, second rule, it will always be in jar. And in most instances, 80% of the time, this is reflected with a kasra. And 80% is so jar in 80%, most instances is reflected in kasra. And there you see an example, because it is preceded by a harf, which is an amil, a governing agent. Yeah? And that's why it converts baytun to baytin. Yeah? Right? A non-governing agent would be like, you could say, you could say, like, if it was wa. So if there was a wa, so if we said, الرجل الرجل were the man and the house, let's say, the man and the house, yeah? Here, it would be الرجل والبيت. So the grammatical state remains as the rafa. All right? So it hasn't governed the agent, it hasn't converted it down, okay? And what you need to understand is that, and we'll come on to that a little bit later, is that in nominal sentences, so jumlat ismiya, that the beginning of the sentence and the end of the sentence are always in rafa, okay? But if there's...
So the why is non-governance agent?
Because it hasn't converted it to like a jar or a mansub. It hasn't done anything to it. It's kept it in its neutral form, which is the dhamma.
So anything that actually changing.
So how would you identify this is a governing agent here?
By the language, so you will know. So for example, there are rules. So for example, conjunctions like this don't have a non-governing agent. So you'll just know.
That I can understand,
yeah. So you'll just, and there aren't that many distinguishing, so you'll know there's a handful, and you'll know these groups are non-governing and these groups are governing, and it's easy to work out with time.
All right.
Because there are only a handful, they're not hundreds. They're just enough on the fingers on the hand to know which ones are what. Okay. So a conjunction like well, which basically means to join things together, they're non-governing. Okay, so you know that anytime a wa is in there, the thing that follows it will always be in the neutral rafa form. You know that. That's your third rule, you know that. But you know that anything that is a preposition, like in, at. So if we give you some examples of prepositions, and their Arabic equivalent, so you have in, which we've done, which is fi, in. Then you've got on, which is ala. Okay. You've got from, which is min. Then you've got to, which is ila. And there's probably a few more. There's li, which belongs to. There's bi. Okay, like in Bismillah, so that bih is like in the name of Allah, Bismillah. So when you say Bismillah, you've actually got two words there. You've got bih and then the ism. And the ismu in that one means name. So in the name, Bismillah, in the name of Allah. So you can see the bih there. Okay? And if you think it's not Bismillah, it's Bismillah. It's got a kasra, right? Yeah, because ismu in this concept mean name is a ism, Okay, so and it's preceded by a governing agent, bih, right? So that it can't be ismu, it's got to be ismi. So bismi, bismillah, not bismullah. All right, so there you can see a prime example of that, bismillah. Or fi sabilillah. So sabili, it's not sabilullah, it's sabilillah. Fi is the governing agent. So you can say fi sabilillah. So you can see that these are common phrases that you know, and you can see, and so it's very easy to. So even without the tashkil, you'll be able to work it out. You know, fi sabilillah. You know it's going to be a lillah. Has to be. We know it because intuitively we say it, but now you know the grammatical reason for why it is. So when you come on something different, that you haven't come across before, you're still going to know it's going to be a kasra in that instance. Yeah. So you see examples like Bismillah, and
So
yeah.
you're saying from bit it means in,
Yes.
and fi meant in as well.
Yeah. So again they have different nuances of meaning. So like fi is more like a physical thing. Let's go in the way of Allah. Okay. Let's go into the garden. Okay. And B is actually these have very different meanings depending on the context. So B could be in, it could be with. Yeah. So these are all depend on the and you'll be able to easily work that out by seeing what the isms are it's connected to, right? So it's more common meanings, yeah, okay, but they have slight shades of meaning depending on what's with the words, and you'll know automatically in the English, I've got to use it meaning to or from or for or belonging to or in the name of, whatever it might be, yeah. So you'll get a feel for that, okay. But the key thing I want you to really understand is not so much to work out the meanings of these, but to see how it's applied, yeah? Okay? And get your appreciation of what these prepositions I'm talking about actually are, okay?
So what's with that?
So, al-rajulu, so the man and the house. Okay, and both are in the rafa. Okay, and you see the wa doesn't convert into baiti, it's baitu, it remains like that.
So that is the ma'an rajul.
Yes.
Rajulu wal bayt.
Yeah, sorry, that's a dhamma, sorry. That's a dhamma. Okay. Are we all on the same level here? Yeah, we've got it, yeah? Okay.
So it's always
Yes.
a fatah.
Sorry?
It's always when there's the governance agent, the word is always become with a fatah.
No.
Not all
Kasra.
kasra.
Kasra, yeah.
It's very hard to remember. What is kasra? What is fatha?
No, what I
Sorry, I think we will be more comfortable with say zay, zabr, and pay.
No, I think
Exactly. No, I'm not, the way we.
But
it's
you,
been,
I wouldn't even say kasra. You shouldn't say with kasra. You should say in jar. Jar. That's this grammatical state. So remember, let's repeat this because this is really important to get a grasp of, because this is where most people, when it comes to advanced Arabic, get stuck on this idea. Jar doesn't 100% mean kasra. Kasra is a way of reflecting jar. Yeah, in most instances.
So
Right.
what's a jar?
Okay, so jar is the grammatical state. Okay, let me repeat this again in terms of the table. Okay, so isms have 3 grammatical states. That is something I want you to try and ingrain in your heads. Just 3 grammatical states. Yeah, number 1 is rafa. Okay, number 2 is nasab. And number 3 is jar. Okay? These are the 3 grammatical states. Alright? Okay. So, rafa, in terms of, we're going to a bit, but just the example is the nominative sentences, or the subject of a verbal sentence. Nasab, in terms of object of a verbal sentence. And jar, in with a preposition, like in the garden, or what we said, or in the name of Allah, as we do example, yeah. So the ism that comes after the preposition, okay, is reflected by these. Is in the state of these. So this is state, all right. Let's get this right. So this is the state, or the grammatical state of the ism. Rafa, nasab, or jar. There can only be in three states. Whenever you see ism in any of the sentences, it's got to be in one of those three states. Now the question is which one it is in. You work out, yeah? How the state is reflected, in most cases, this will be in the in the dhamma. In the nasab, it's going to be in most cases the fatha, and in most cases for the jar, in the kasra. In most cases, all right? So, and the key word is most, because what will confuse you is that when you see a word in jar, but it's not expressed in a kasra, you're going to get confused. Right? But what we're teaching you today is that 80% of the time it's going to be in kasra when there's a jar state. But there's a 20% chance it may not. And there are reasons for that, which we will tackle when the time comes for that. But in our heads, we know that most instances, this is what we need to remember. Okay? Because that will get us through the language, most of it. Okay? So this is a really, really important concept. Isms are always expressed in three grammatical states. There has to be a grammatical state on every sentence, in whatever situation. It's the question of which one it is, rafa, nasab, and jar. When you know the grammatical state, then that will give you a clue as to whether, if it's in nasab, maybe it's the object that we're dealing with here. So I shouldn't consider it as a subject. If it's in jar, is there a preposition before it? There is. So that's the reason it's got into jar, like Bismillah. Okay, it's not for any other reason. And if it's in rafa, maybe it's the subject.
So the jar actually is most of the cases, which in 80% cases, if it's a governing agent is driving to make it jar as a kasra, whereas if it's a non-governing agent, then it can be fatha or dhamma.
Can be, absolutely. In most cases. But where the trickiness can be is that sometimes it could be in a fatha for a governing agent, for that 20%. Yeah. So, but I don't want to go into that, because what I want you to appreciate is that's where people give up. Because they haven't understood this concept that it's not the kasra that's making it jar, it's the other way around. Kasra is reflected by jar in most cases. But if it's a fatha in this small 20%, it's still in jar. That's the idea, is that what is it? This is the most important thing, is what is the grammatical state I'm dealing with? Is it in rafa? Is it in nasab? Is it in jar? Okay?
So rafa is, once more,
Yeah?
rafa is the present or
No, it's a subject.
subject? So what's the meaning of
Nasab
rafa?
is an object.
Right. I'm going to introduce to you another thing which I think you'll like. Okay, this will help you. You know how we divided in the Arabic map, yeah? We said we went into kalima, words, we went in murakkab ghayr mufid for phrases, and we went in murakkab mufid as in jumla, the sentences. We said in the jumla there are only two types of sentences, right? That helped us. So we're only dealing with two types of sentences for jumla. For kalima, we said there are three types of words, right? And then we said for phrases, we said there are 15 types of phrases, okay? Now what I'm going to introduce to you is, well, how many times are these different instances used? For the rafa, there are 8 different uses of it. And one of them is subject. But there are 8 ways rafa can be used, all right? In jar, there are only 2 ways. So you already know 50% of jar, because you know that a preposition, if it's preceded by a preposition, a governing agent like preposition, it will be in jar. So you know 50% of that rule already. There's just one more 50% you have to know, and then you've done jar. You've completed jar 100%. There are only 2 instances, types of jar. In nasab, there are 12. And one of them is as an object of a verb. Interesting, isn't it? But you can go back to this, you see, so it gives you an idea, well, how many instances, so I've got a one, so if I say subject, I've got a 1 in 8 chance it's going to be a subject, okay? But the daraba would be the extra clue, yeah, because it's a verb. So that's going to give, it's going to favour you that it's going to be a subject rather than something else. And then when you know what the others are, you'll be able to work it out. And that's how people get away with reading Arabic without the tashkil, because they know these rules in their heads, so they can apply, what state they're in, because they know all the rules. And this is what this is the journey we're on. This is the journey we're on. Because where people get stuck, they think, rafa can only mean subject, and nasab can only mean object. Yeah? They don't realize there's 11 other ways of using a nasab for an ism. They don't realize there's 7 other ways of using rafa besides subject and a verb. Okay? And even they don't realize there's only 2 ways to be in jar. Yeah, people are overwhelmed. They think, then maybe there's a kasra. There must be a million ways this is used. No, there's only 2. One's really easy, it's just a preposition, a harf before it. But you know this from a handful what the rules are for that. It'll be easy. And there's just one other that we'll talk about later. And that's it. You're done. And this will build your confidence that you'll be able to. And that's why I'm really focused on these core lessons, because this will, if you ingrain this in your head, it's going to really help you by mapping this out of this. And then we will start to apply. And then what we'll do, we'll keep going back to this to remind ourselves. Yeah? And what will be the task that we will do is actually break these down and introduce. I won't do all of them. I may introduce just 4 out of the 8. I may just introduce 5 out of the 12. I'll introduce 2 out of the 2, because that's what we need to take, for most instances. And then as the lessons proceed, we'll then go to the 7th and the 8th, and then the 11th as the 12th, because you're 1 to 10, you've mastered. So just the extra 11 and 12 you'll add on. You're not going to get it all at once, because that's when we get overwhelmed, and and that 20% is not actually, is all we need for the 80% of the application. We don't need the full 100% here. All right? I think that's enough for the lesson today, because that's enough to us to just feed in. So I'm just going to rewind and just remind ourselves of what we've really just covered today. Okay? We've gone through the Arabic map, and we talked about kalima. Okay? More specifically in the kalima, not the fi'l and the harf, we talked about isms today. Okay? And the thing that we've learnt today is that isms have grammatical states. There are only 3. They are rafa, nasab, and jar. And in most instances, the rafa is reflected with a dhamma. In most instances, the nasab is reflected with a fatha. And in most instances, the jar is reflected in kasra, not the other way around. Kasra does not mean jar. Fatha does not mean nasab. And dhamma does not mean rafa. It's the other way around. It's the state that we need to, and it's reflected in that way in most instances. We've learnt that. We've learnt and we've seen application of that. For jar, we know there are only 2 ways it can be used. One we've done today is before a preposition. So we know 50% of that. And the example we can do is fi sabilillah or bismillah. Okay, these are 2 examples. And then in the rafa and nasab, we've seen it applied in the verbal sentence. Daraba zaydun amran. So you've seen it applied there, where the dhamma is on the zayd, which is the rafa, okay, meaning subject, and then the amran, which is reflected as a fatha, is the nasab. Okay, all right. So we've seen that applied in that instance. So this is what we will do today. And what we've also appreciated is that isms have 8 ways that they can express as a rafa. They have 12 ways that they can express as a nasab. And there's 2 ways that they can be expressed as a jar. And in the next lesson, we're going to start to tick off a few of these as to where all these other ways, where do they come from? That will be where we will start to discover some examples of that. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.